Recognizing Mr. Wrong by Abiola George. Copyright Recognizing Mr. Wrong Updated Edition 2024. Copyright and 2011 by Abiola George. Updated copyright 2024 by Abiola George. All rights reserved. Introduction. I recently came across a book titled, Where Did All the Good Men Go? And couldn't help but resonate with the question. Every single Christian woman I know has asked herself the same thing at one point or another. Of course, men are asking similar questions about women. But that's a topic for another book. Although I haven't read the book, its title stirred up a flood of thoughts. Every day, I hear stories of failed relationships, some of which are personal, and I've noticed a common thread. The signs of trouble are usually there from the start, clear as day. Yet many of us ignore them. Perhaps it's the rose-tinted romantic glasses we wear, or a tinge of desperation that blinds us to reality. This book is not about hating men. My goal is to shed light on the kinds of men who are almost guaranteed to waste your time. Recognizing them early can save your heart and energy for someone who truly deserves them. The stories you'll read here are true. While names and details have been fictionalized to respect privacy, the lessons are real. We all have more in common than we might think, and you'll likely recognize some of these men, or aspects of them, in your own experiences or those of someone close to you. Above all, this is a book about empowerment. It's about identifying patterns, learning from them, and moving forward with wisdom and grace. Enjoy the journey. Mr. My Mummy said Felicia, a hard-working and dynamic woman in her early 30s, was ecstatic to meet Alex. He was everything she had been praying for. Tall, good-looking, and working in a field she admired. At 40 years old, Alex had never been married, and from the way he pursued her, asking mutual friends to introduce them after spotting her at a wedding, Felicia felt her prayers were finally being answered. On their first date, Alex brought up his mother in conversation. Felicia found it endearing. His affection for his mom made him seem sensitive and family-oriented. Within a week, Alex began painting a picture of their future together, talking about how their children would look and where they might live. Felicia, swept off her feet by his enthusiasm, let down her guard and allowed herself to dream of a life with him. However, cracks started to appear. 2 weeks into their whirlwind romance, Felicia brought up their cultural differences during a casual conversation, suggesting that they could blend the best of both worlds when raising their children. Though she noticed Alex's smile falter, she didn't think much of it. But that same night, he insisted on cutting their date short. The next day, he was distant over the phone. When she pressed him, Alex dropped a bombshell. It turned out Alex had called his older brother to discuss their relationship. His brother, upon learning Felicia was from a different tribe, advised him to clear it with their mother, warning that their mother might be so shocked by the news it could jeopardize her health. Alex explained that their family valued tribal purity, and how, according to his mother, children from mixed tribe unions might face difficulties enjoying certain village benefits. A point made even more baffling, considering Alex and Felicia both lived in the United States. The conversation culminated with Alex's devastating confession. He would only marry her if his mother had already passed away. For now, he couldn't risk the stress of introducing her to his family. Felicia was heartbroken, not just by the rejection, but by the realization that Alex had known all along he wouldn't stand up for her, yet still pursued her until she fell for him. In hindsight, Felicia was lucky. She dodged a lifetime with a man who lacked the courage to prioritize his partner over his mother's prejudices. A man tied so tightly to his mother's approval, even at 40, is unlikely to offer the protection and emotional support a partner needs. How to spot him? While it's admirable for a man to love and respect his mother, there's a line between a healthy relationship and a dependent one. If he cannot make decisions without mama's input, he is not ready for the responsibility of marriage. A man must leave his parents emotionally to cleave to his wife, as the Bible advises. This does not mean abandoning his mother, but recognizing that his primary role is now as a protector and partner to his spouse. To recognize this type early on, listen carefully, especially when emotions cloud your judgment. Ask about his relationship with his mother, and pay attention to his responses. Has she influenced his past relationships? Does he consult her for every decision? These subtle clues can reveal the depth of her influence. Also, observe how he handles pressure. If his loyalty to his mother routinely overrides his independence, it's a sign that his priorities might leave you out in the cold. I'm trapped in a bad marriage. Where have you been all my life? Why didn't I meet you before I got married? I'm trapped in a loveless marriage with a woman who doesn't care about me. These were the words Thomas used to lure Betsy into his tangled web. Betsy, a principled Christian woman, would have sworn she'd never get involved with a married man. Yet, it all began innocently enough. Betsy and Thomas were colleagues at a demanding organization where long hours were the norm. Betsy often brought homemade meals to avoid eating junk food, always packing enough to share with a coworker. One day, Thomas joined her in the office kitchen, and she offered him breakfast. He eagerly accepted, mentioning that he often left home too early for a proper meal. This small gesture sparked a friendship. Soon, Thomas became her regular breakfast companion. Over steaming cups of coffee, they bonded as they discussed everything from work to dreams and ambitions. Betsy, kind-hearted and encouraging, nicknamed him manager, speaking to the promotion she hoped he would soon earn. It wasn't long before Thomas began calling her my darling, his gaze softening in a way that made her heart flutter. She was flattered but determined to keep things platonic, until they were sent on a week-long training trip out of town. Away from the office and its routines, Thomas worked to break down her defenses. He shared his marital woes, painting himself as a victim of a wife who didn't understand or love him. Betsy's heart softened. She began to see herself as his comforter, the one person who truly understood him. By the end of the week, the inevitable happened. Upon their return, things changed. Thomas stopped attending their breakfast meetings and barely acknowledged her. Rumors spread through the office like wildfire. To her horror, Betsy learned that Thomas's wife was pregnant, and he had been using their fling as an emotional escape. Confronting him, she got a tepid apology. He admitted feeling left out during his wife's pregnancy and justified his actions as a lapse in judgment. Betsy was devastated, but she managed to secure a transfer to another department, avoiding further humiliation. The hard truth. Betsy's story, while heartbreaking, highlights an important truth. She allowed herself to be drawn into a situation she knew was wrong. Thomas didn't hide his marital status, and she justified crossing boundaries under the guise of just being nice. Sharing breakfast, speaking to his future, and investing emotionally, all things his wife should have been doing, blurred the lines of propriety. It's not a single act that makes a woman a surrogate partner. It's the gradual erosion of boundaries. While you may think you're simply being kind, actions like encouraging his dreams, offering emotional support, or providing meals create a connection that can lead to something more. How to avoid him. Married men with troubled relationships often seek emotional fulfillment elsewhere rather than addressing issues at home. Remember this guiding principle. A married man is unavailable until his marriage is officially over. If his marriage is genuinely loveless, he will take steps to end it on his own, not wait for a new woman to justify his exit. Guard your heart and be mindful of the roles you play in a man's life. If he's in a committed relationship, it's not your place to be his confidant, supporter, or comforter. Respect yourself and the sanctity of marriage, even when others do not. Mr. I have a dream, but I'm not working. Bart was the quintessential tall, dark, and handsome man. Standing at 6'3", with broad shoulders and a dazzling smile, he was a sight to behold. A living work of art, and his voice, smooth and deep like Barry White's. He was a captivating storyteller who could hold your attention for hours, spinning tales about his adventures. There seemed to be no topic he hadn't experienced, or didn't have a close friend who had. Bart also had big dreams. He wanted to become a world-renowned author and public speaker, envisioning a new genre of factual fiction that would keep readers guessing about what was real and what was imaginary. When he talked about it, his passion was contagious, making everyone believe he was destined for greatness. Clara met Bart at a friend's party, and like most women he paid attention to, she was immediately smitten. Clara was an investment banker, a successful, self-sufficient woman whose friends had dragged her to the party, hoping to break her out of her overly work-focused routine. Meeting Bart felt like fate. He spent the entire evening with her, maintaining eye contact, flashing his charming smile, and making her feel like the center of his world. When Bart suggested dinner a few nights later at a high-end restaurant, Clara eagerly agreed. Bart mentioned he'd already be in the area and asked her to meet him there. The evening was magical. He navigated the menu with the expertise of someone familiar with fine dining, making her feel like she was in the hands of an experienced and sophisticated man. Then came the check. Bart reached into his inner jacket pocket, only to look stricken when he couldn't find his wallet. With an apologetic smile, he explained that he must have left it in another jacket. Feeling sorry for him, Clara offered to pay. She even covered his cab fare home since he hadn't driven. Bart promised to pay her back, but he never brought it up again. Over the following weeks, Bart's true nature became clear. Their outings were always to events like parties or weddings, places where expenses were minimal for him. They rarely spoke on the phone, because he claimed to prefer face-to-face interactions. Clara assumed he spent his days working on his novel, while juggling a side job to stay afloat, though he never explained how he made his money. One evening, Clara saw Bart speaking to a shady-looking man at a party. He seemed anxious, almost fearful. When she asked about it, Bart reluctantly admitted he'd borrowed a significant sum of money for a project that hadn't panned out. The man was a debt collector, and Bart was desperate to pay him back. He begged Clara to lend him the money, insisting that she had plenty of savings as an investment banker, and that this was a temporary setback. "If you love me," he pleaded, "you'll help me out of this mess." Sensing something was off, Clara decided to dig deeper. She asked mutual friends about Bart's work, and what she learned was shocking. No one knew what he did for a living. He had borrowed money from several friends and never paid them back, always promising they'd regret their kindness. Once his first book deal came through, but no one had ever seen a draft of his so-called masterpiece. When confronted, Bart turned nasty. He called Clara stingy and ungrateful, accusing her of being unwilling to support his dream. He finally revealed that he'd pursued her specifically because of her financial stability. That was the final straw. Clara walked away and never looked back. The hard truth. There are too many women like Clara, financially supporting men who refuse to take responsibility for their lives. Bart had no intention of building a partnership. He was looking for a sponsor. While there's nothing wrong with a woman choosing to support her husband, especially if she earns more, enabling a lazy and irresponsible man is a dangerous trap. How to spot him? A man like Bart is easy to spot if you're paying attention. He talks a lot about his dreams but has no concrete plan or action to achieve them. He's content with a lavish lifestyle funded by others while waiting for his big break. If you notice inconsistencies in his stories about work or money, take them seriously. A good man may have big dreams, but he also takes responsibility for his present. As the Bible says, a lazy man should not eat. Remember, a man who can't take care of himself financially cannot take care of you. Don't mistake charm and ambition for substance. Watch his actions. They'll tell you everything you need to know. Mr. Undercover, nobody has to know. Marissa was beside herself with grief. She had cried so much that she was emotionally drained, unable to shed another tear. If anyone had told her she'd end up in this situation, she would never have believed them. How did she get here? Sunday was one of the most eligible men in her church, a committed leader with an extensive knowledge of Scripture. He was the type of man every woman hoped to marry. Many had him on their prayer lists. He was dependable, eloquent, and, from all appearances, deeply spiritual. When Sunday approached Marissa with a proposal of friendship that might lead to something more permanent, she was ecstatic. With his sterling reputation, she didn't even bother to pray about it. Surely he was God's will for her life. However, Sunday made an unusual request. He asked her to keep their relationship a secret. He explained that his popularity in the church might stir jealousy among the women, who could try to sabotage their relationship out of spite. Marissa, flattered and eager to be with him, agreed. She stopped talking to him in public and kept their interactions private, as he requested. Over time, their secret romance deepened. They would meet in secluded places, far from prying eyes. He never invited her to his home, and he never visited hers. Marissa justified this behavior, believing that he was simply trying to protect their relationship. One day, Sunday asked her to meet him at a quiet hotel not far from town. Although it wasn't the first time they'd met in a hotel, something about this visit felt off. Her heart warned her to be cautious, but the excitement of seeing him clouded her judgment. One thing led to another, and they ended up in bed together for the first time. Marissa felt an overwhelming sense of guilt afterward, but Sunday reassured her, promising that he intended to marry her soon. 2 months later, Marissa fell ill and couldn't attend Sunday service. That day, her phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from friends. To her horror, she discovered that Sunday's wedding banns had been announced during the service. His engagement to another woman in the church was public knowledge. Her world crumbled. Sunday had been courting her in secret while preparing to marry someone else all along. The hard truth. Secret relationships are rarely a good idea. When a man is serious about you, he should have nothing to hide, least of all you. A relationship kept under wraps usually indicates something amiss. Perhaps he's juggling other women, hiding his true intentions, or unwilling to commit fully to you. Marissa ignored several red flags, justifying Sunday's behavior and letting her emotions override her discernment. If a man asks you to stay hidden from the world, ask yourself why. Love is meant to be celebrated, not concealed. How to spot him? Men like Sunday often use clever excuses to justify secrecy. They may claim that going public too soon invites unnecessary drama, or that keeping things quiet protects the relationship. While it's wise to avoid broadcasting every detail of a budding romance, the fact that you're together should not be a secret. Pay attention to his actions. Does he avoid being seen with you in public? Does he insist on meeting only in private? If a man truly values you, he'll be proud to declare his relationship with you, not hide it. If he's asking you to stay in the shadows, it's time to step out. Without him. Mister, if you love me, you'll show it. Do you remember the classic Nigerian song Choices by King Sunny Ade and Onyeka Onwenu? It starts with a skit featuring a young couple at a familiar crossroads in their relationship. The man wants sex, claiming it as proof of her love, while the woman hesitates, fearing the consequences. Onyeka's refrain, "If you love me, you will wait for me," echoes a sentiment many women have struggled to voice when faced with similar pressure. Tanya's story is a modern version of this timeless dilemma. Tanya was a vibrant young woman, full of life and optimism. Her boyfriend, Johnson, was older and exuded a brooding, dangerous charm that excited her. Many people warned her about his bad reputation and unsavory friends, but Tanya dismissed their concerns. "If they got to know him like I do, they'd see how great he really is," she told herself. Despite rumors of his violent temper, Johnson always seemed gentle with her, reinforcing her belief that she brought out the best in him. One day, Tanya arrived at Johnson's house earlier than planned. A few of his questionable friends were just leaving, their laughter lingering in the air. As she waited for him to return, her curiosity led her to peek into a black leather bag on his table. To her shock, the bag contained 3 guns. Panicked, she zipped it shut and tried to compose herself, but her wild eyes betrayed her unease. When Johnson arrived, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Sitting close to her, he calmly explained the guns were for protection, claiming some of his friends had stolen them and used them in a robbery. Now the police were involved, and he needed a safe place to hide the guns. Then came the request that shattered Tanya's world. Johnson asked her to keep the guns for him. "The police won't suspect you," he assured her. Seeing her hesitation, he added, "If you really love me, you'll show me by doing this small thing I'm asking." Tanya suddenly found herself face to face with the danger she had once found thrilling. She was now an accomplice to a crime, trapped in a situation that threatened everything she held dear. The hard truth. If a man asks you to compromise your values, morals, or even the law to prove your love, he is not the right man for you. Tanya's story might seem extreme, but this pattern of manipulation is more common than we think. Whether it's pushing for physical intimacy before you're ready, asking for financial support you can't afford, or involving you in questionable activities, the tactic is always the same: guilt-driven persuasion. It's important to recognize that love doesn't demand reckless sacrifices. Real love is rooted in mutual respect and shared values, not in coercion or emotional blackmail. How to spot him. Men like Johnson often start small, testing your boundaries with requests that seem harmless at first. Over time, they escalate their demands, slowly eroding your ability to say no. Pay attention to patterns. Does he often frame his requests as tests of your loyalty or affection? Does he ignore or belittle your objections? If a man's love feels conditional, tied to what you can do for him, it's not love at all. Listen to your instincts. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't rationalize his behavior or convince yourself you can change him. Love that requires you to betray yourself is not love worth having. Mister, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church. Are you a born-again Christian? Joy asked cautiously during her third meeting with Bob. Her aunt, worried about Joy's singleness, had taken it upon herself to give Bob her number, along with a glowing recommendation. Bob's stories, of which there were plenty, had intrigued Joy, but something about his answers seemed evasive. She had begun to suspect that Bob was more Christian by association than by conviction. When Joy finally brought up the question of his faith, Bob didn't answer directly. Instead, he deflected, attacking her for questioning him at all. To prove his spirituality, he lifted his hands, closed his eyes, and began singing a popular worship song. For Joy, this theatrical display was the last straw. She declined future dates, trusting her instincts. Sarah wasn't as fortunate. She met Abe in university, where their connection was instant. Sarah was a leader in her campus fellowship, while Abe, though he could speak fluent Christianese, wasn't affiliated with any church or fellowship. Whenever the subject came up, he'd claim that his relationship with God was personal and didn't require attending services in a building. Though his explanation rang hollow, Sarah chose to ignore her doubts and entered into a relationship with him. After all, they seemed to share common values. 2 years after graduation, they decided to marry. When Abe suggested an outdoor wedding instead of a church ceremony, Sarah's parents refused to entertain the idea. They had a traditional church wedding, and the event was grand, as Sarah was the first child of her elderly parents. Everything seemed perfect, until the evening of the wedding. Following tradition, Sarah returned to her parents' home after the reception to await her husband's family, who would formally collect her and take her to his father's house for prayers and a welcome ceremony. Typically, the bride's feet were washed with water as a symbolic gesture of a fresh start. But to Sarah's horror, Ab's family insisted that she step on the blood of a freshly slaughtered animal instead. This ritual was clearly occultic, a covenant practice involving the shedding of blood. Sarah refused, standing firm despite pressure from Ab's family. When they barred her from entering the house unless she complied, she returned to her parents, ending the marriage before it had truly begun. The hard truth. A man who claims to be a Christian but dismisses the importance of corporate worship or downplays spiritual accountability is a red flag. True faith is reflected not only in words but in actions and a shared commitment to spiritual growth. Sarah's story highlights the danger of ignoring this principle. Abe's disdain for church attendance was more than a quirk. It was a window into deeper spiritual misalignments that became painfully evident after the wedding. The Bible warns against being unequally yoked with unbelievers. This doesn't just apply to obvious differences in faith, but also to subtle incompatibilities in core values. A man who isn't walking the same spiritual path as you can become a burden, pulling you away from your purpose. How to spot him. A man like Abe might sound convincing, but his actions will reveal the truth. Does he avoid spiritual gatherings or criticize church leadership? Does he emphasize his personal relationship with God while showing no evidence of spiritual accountability or growth? Pay attention to inconsistencies between his words and his actions. True partnership requires shared convictions and alignment on the most important things. If you find yourself justifying or overlooking spiritual red flags, it's time to take a step back. Love should never come at the expense of your faith. I'm not ready for a commitment, said Keep It Light. She was a woman blessed with youthful looks. Her radiant smile and easy laughter made it hard to guess her true age. Tess carried herself like a princess, with an air of grace and charm that turned heads. When Charles met her, he was smitten. Though 10 years her junior, Charles exuded maturity, or so Tess thought. He pursued her relentlessly, and despite her initial reservations, she eventually agreed to date him. For a time, they seemed happy together, as long as they avoided mixing with each other's friends. Their age difference became glaringly obvious in social settings. Tess was already in secondary school when Charles was born, and they had vastly different life experiences. While Tess, at 38, was ready to settle down and start a family, Charles, at 28, felt he had more to achieve before considering marriage. Early in their relationship, Charles made his intentions, or lack thereof, clear. I'm not ready for a commitment. Let's keep things light and fun. Tess, against her better judgment, went along with it, convincing herself that he would change his mind over time. She poured herself into the relationship, meeting his emotional and financial needs while ignoring the nagging voice in her head, warning her that something was off. 2 years passed, and Tess realized her efforts were in vain. Despite her sacrifices, Charles remained non-committal. He claimed her pressure to settle down was interfering with his work and stifling the lightness of their relationship. He even suggested extending his timeline by another 2 years, leaving Tess devastated. At 40, she faced the bitter truth. She had wasted precious time on a man who had no intention of building a future with her. The hard truth. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. From the start, Charles was honest about his unwillingness to commit. Tess's mistake was in thinking she could change his mind through persistence and patience. Relationships built on the hope of transformation rarely succeed. A man who isn't ready to settle down won't magically become ready because of your love or sacrifices. It's easy to confuse infatuation with potential, but time is precious. If your goals don't align with your partner's, it's better to walk away than to invest in a relationship with no future. How to spot him. Men like Charles often present themselves as fun-loving and carefree, avoiding serious discussions about the future. They'll tell you outright they're not ready for commitment, yet expect all the benefits of a committed relationship: emotional support, intimacy, and sometimes financial assistance. Watch for signs of immaturity, a pattern of short-lived relationships, an inability to discuss long-term plans, or a tendency to blame others for their lack of progress. If a man's actions consistently indicate he's not ready to build a life with you, take him at his word and move on. Mr. Fine Boy, I'm doing you a favor. Eugene was undeniably good-looking. His friends often joked that it took him 2 hours to get ready every morning, and he planned his outfits a week in advance. His hair was always perfectly groomed, his face clean-shaven, and his clothes looked like they had just come off a magazine cover. He was the epitome of style and sophistication, and his cologne left an impression wherever he went. Bianca, on the other hand, was pretty in a natural, understated way. She was more homely than glamorous, preferring simple hairstyles and minimal makeup. When Eugene approached her for a relationship, she was shocked. He wasn't the type of man she thought would notice her. Flattered and intrigued, she agreed to date him. It didn't take long for Bianca to notice Eugene's peculiar behavior. Whenever they went out and met his friends, he never introduced her as his girlfriend. He'd simply say, "This is Bianca," and leave it at that. At parties, he often ignored her, spending more time with his friends while she sat alone nursing a drink. One evening, after enduring this treatment for hours, Bianca decided she'd had enough and left the party early. Eugene showed up at her apartment later that night, furious. He accused her of embarrassing him in front of his friends and said she was lucky to have someone as attractive as him in her life. "I'm doing you a favor by dating you," he declared, leaving Bianca stunned. His words cut deep. but they also gave her the clarity she needed to end the relationship. The hard truth. Eugene's behavior may sound extreme, but it highlights an important lesson. The way you feel about yourself will influence how others treat you. From the beginning, Bianca felt she wasn't good enough for Eugene, and he capitalized on her insecurity. Men like Eugene thrive on this dynamic, using their charm and appearance to manipulate and belittle their partners. No one is doing you a favor by being in a relationship with you. A healthy partnership is built on mutual respect and admiration, not on one person feeling superior to the other. How to spot him. A man like Eugene is easy to spot if you pay attention to his priorities. Does he care more about his looks, clothes, or car than he does about your feelings? Does he belittle you, or make you feel like you're lucky to have him? Is he more concerned with how others perceive him than with how he treats you? If a man's confidence crosses the line into arrogance, it's a red flag. True confidence is humble and secure, not flashy or condescending. Remember, you are valuable and worthy of love and respect. If a man treats you as anything less, it's time to walk away. Being Miss Right. I've spent much of this book highlighting different types of Mr. Wrong, but here's an important truth. Even if you successfully avoid all these men and eventually meet Mr. Right, you won't keep him unless you are Miss Right. Just as there are any Mr. Wrongs walking around, there are plenty of Miss Wrongs as well. You attract what you are inside. If you find yourself repeatedly attracting a certain type of man, it's worth reflecting on why. What about you draws them in? What signals are you sending, consciously or unconsciously, that make these men think you're a match for them? Sometimes a positive trait, like kindness or generosity, can be misused when boundaries aren't firmly in place. A friend of mine once lamented that she only seemed to attract married men. After some introspection, we categorized the men into two groups, those looking for a fling and those seeking emotional comfort. For the first group, we realized she might be inadvertently giving off signals that made her seem accessible. For the second, it was her warmth and nurturing nature that drew them in. The hard truth is that if you don't respect yourself, others won't respect you either. If you don't set clear boundaries in your relationships, people will step past what's acceptable. A country with porous borders will always attract smugglers and vagabonds. The same is true for your life. If you don't clearly define what you will and won't tolerate, the wrong people will take advantage of your openness. How to be Miss Right. Being Miss Right isn't complicated, but it does require effort. You need to become the kind of person you want to attract. If you're looking for a good man, ask yourself, what qualities do good men value in a partner? What can you do to reflect those qualities in your own life? Here are a few starting points. 1. Self-respect. Carry yourself with dignity and confidence. Set clear boundaries and communicate them firmly but kindly. 2. Self-awareness. Take the time to understand your strengths, weaknesses, and patterns. Why do you allow certain types of people into your life? How can you change that? 3. Balance. Good relationships are partnerships, not projects. Don't fall into the trap of trying to fix someone. Focus instead on building a connection that's rooted in mutual respect and shared values. The myth of the bad girl. There's a common complaint among single women. Why do the bad girls get all the good men? It's tempting to think this is because these women are more sexually available, but that's rarely the case. Often, it's because they exude confidence and know how to make a man feel needed and appreciated. Men want to feel like heroes. If you've been unintentionally sending out signals that scream, "I can take care of myself, I don't need anyone," you may need to rethink your approach. Being independent is wonderful, but it doesn't mean you have to reject help or partnership. Allowing someone to see your vulnerabilities isn't weakness, it's trust. Think about this. Why would Samson, despite Delilah's betrayals, keep going back to her? She offered him something he valued deeply: attention and admiration. Becoming Miss Right is about understanding what you bring to the table and ensuring it aligns with what you want in a partner. When you do, you'll attract someone who's truly worthy of you. Anatomy of Mr. Right. This book wouldn't be complete without a snapshot of who Mr. Right is. I was tempted to write just one sentence. He is ready to commit to one woman and build a life with her. But Mr. Right is more than just someone who's ready. To paint a fuller picture, I'll use the parts of the body, the head, arms, and legs, to illustrate the qualities of a good man. The head. The head is essential because it governs the whole body, housing the brain, which enables us to think, perceive, and make decisions. Mr. Right's head must be in the right place. Self-control and wisdom. A right-thinking man exhibits restraint and thoughtfulness in his decisions. He is not impulsive but considers the consequences of his actions. Vision. He knows where he's going in life and has a clear sense of purpose. His vision doesn't just serve him, it includes a future where you both can thrive. Discernment. He can recognize what's best for him and has the courage to pursue it. A man who is wise enough to recognize his wife when he meets her and follows through is someone who values commitment. The heart. While the head governs logic, the heart governs compassion. Mr. Right doesn't just think, he feels deeply and acts from a place of love. Compassion and generosity. A good man demonstrates care in his words and actions. He's generous with his time, attention, and resources without neglecting his own needs. Humility and prayerfulness. He has a vibrant relationship with God, prioritizing prayer and spiritual growth. He isn't arrogant or unwilling to admit when he's wrong. Instead, he's humble enough to accept correction and say sorry when necessary. Balance. He knows how to love others while maintaining his own emotional and spiritual health. This balance allows him to be a stable, reliable partner. The arms. The arms symbolize strength and provision. Provider. Mr. Right doesn't have to be rich, but he must be willing and able to work. A man who refuses to take financial responsibility for his life is not ready to take care of a family. Protector. He has the capacity to protect you emotionally, spiritually, and physically. This doesn't mean he's a superhero, but he should be someone you feel safe with. Someone who shields you from harm and supports you in times of need. Dependability. His strength isn't just physical, it's in his character. He follows through on his promises and can be counted on when it matters most. The legs. Legs signify movement and progress. Ambition. Mr. Right is going somewhere in life. He doesn't have to have arrived, but he should be actively working toward his goals. Resilience. Life is full of challenges, and Mr. Right doesn't give up easily. He knows how to stand firm in adversity and keeps moving forward. Growth-oriented. He recognizes that life is a journey of continuous improvement. Whether it's through personal development, spiritual growth, or giving back to others, he's always striving to be better. Mr. Right isn't perfect, and he doesn't need to be. What sets him apart is his willingness to grow, his commitment to his values, and his readiness to love and support you as a partner. Look for the man whose head, heart, arms, and legs align with your vision for a meaningful relationship. When you find him, you'll know he's worth the wait. The Journey to Wholeness. As we close this book, I want to remind you of one unshakable truth. You are enough. No matter how many wrong turns you've taken, how many Mr. Wrongs you've encountered, or how broken your heart may feel, you are not defined by your mistakes. You are a woman of infinite worth, and the journey to recognizing that worth is the most important one you will ever take. We've explored the many faces of Mr. Wrong, but this book has never been about them. It's about you. It's about equipping you with the tools to discern what serves you and what doesn't, to set boundaries that protect your peace, and to stand firm in the knowledge of your value. You see, the greatest love story begins not when you meet the perfect man, but when you truly fall in love with yourself. This kind of love isn't selfish, it's essential. It's the foundation upon which healthy, fulfilling relationships are built. If you don't value yourself, you'll accept less than you deserve. If you don't set standards, you'll attract those who won't rise to meet them. So, what does it mean to choose yourself? It means knowing when to walk away, even when it hurts. It means saying no to relationships that chip away at your confidence, and yes to the freedom of being alone, rather than poorly accompanied. It means nurturing your mind, body, and soul, so that you become the best version of yourself. Not for a man, but for you. When you choose yourself, you'll find that the world begins to reflect your choice. Opportunities arise, relationships improve, and you start to attract people who see your worth because you've already seen it in yourself. As you move forward, I encourage you to embrace patience. The desire for love is natural and beautiful, but rushing into the arms of the wrong person can leave scars that take years to heal. Trust in the timing of your life. Trust that when you've done the work to become Miss Right, Mr. Right will find you. But don't wait idly for him. Live your life fully. Pursue your dreams, deepen your relationship with God, and surround yourself with people who inspire and uplift you. The more you invest in yourself, the less willing you'll be to settle for anything less than God's best. I hope you let this book serve as both a guide and a mirror. Use it to reflect on your patterns, your choices, and the lessons you've learned along the way. If you see yourself in the stories of the women who encountered Mr. Wrong, don't despair. Instead, let their experiences remind you of your strength and resilience. You've survived so much already, you're more powerful than you know. When the day comes that you meet a man who sees you, values you, and chooses you wholeheartedly, you'll recognize him, not because he's perfect, but because he complements the woman you've become. Until then, keep becoming, keep growing, keep loving yourself fiercely and unapologetically. Because you, dear reader, are worthy of a love that reflects the beauty and strength within you. Never forget that. And so, your journey continues. One step closer to the love you deserve. I am rooting for you. About the author. Abiola George is a middle-aged, happily married mama who knows a thing or two about navigating the twists and turns of the dating scene. After encountering her fair share of Mr. Wrongs, she finally met her prince in her late 30s. Based in the UK, Abiola is an accomplished academic researcher with a PhD, balancing her intellectual pursuits with her passion for writing. Through her books, she offers practical advice, heartfelt wisdom, and a dose of humor, all from a grounded, Christian worldview. When she's not writing or diving into research, Abiola enjoys spending time with her family, engaging with her community, and helping women recognize their worth and embrace their God-given potential.